is easy. We're home. Mm-hmm. Let's see. You gotta smile.
Hare Krishna. So all the technical difficulties are out. So I hope you can hear me loud and clear, Chaitanya Prabhu and Shara.
We can.
So far, so good.
Thank you. So to all our viewers, welcome to another session of GBC SBT. So today we are very happy to have with us Chaitanya Prabhu and Shara Mataji from the United States. They are serving in the front line. They are one of our heroes, inspired by Srila Prabhupada and obligated to their profession. They are on the front line, trying to help humanity in whatever way they can. So I can introduce Shara Mataji, but I would rather ask her to introduce herself and tell us about the work that she is doing right now. So over to you, Shara. Please tell us
Krishna, thank you.
about what you are doing on the front line.
So I currently work as an emergency room social worker in our local hospital. And my main role pre-COVID
Please tell us
discharge
about
planning.
your work
I
and
was
what you do.
actually hired in the hospital to keep out what are called social admits, basically people that have no medical issues, but they have more social issues. So that was my role when I first started there, working in the emergency room with the emergency room staff and making sure that people that came in had everything that was set up for them to go home safely. Big key for hospitals as a social worker or hospitals overall is to make sure that when people are discharged, there's a safe discharge. So that was my job my main role pre-COVID in the hospital.
Great. And Chaitanya Prabhu, you are IT, going to healthcare IT. So please tell us about your work and what you do.
Hare Krishna. So Caitanya Kishor, work in healthcare
Over
IT,
to you, Chaitanya.
system administrator
Please tell
for
us
a
about
pretty big hospital. So I'm in charge of a few of the departments as far as their systems are concerned. That's pre-COVID.
Have I
Since
frozen?
the COVID epidemic hit, the
Are you able to hear me,
hospital
Chaitanya
business
Prabhu?
model and pretty much everyone else has shifted towards a central focus on COVID and supporting COVID patients and supporting COVID units. So as of right now, the majority of our work, even in IT, healthcare IT, is focused on supporting the people that support COVID patients. Now we have set up different COVID command centers. So we're kind of responsible for the technology involved in those command centers. There's more of an emphasis on telehealth, health via cameras and phones and everything. So we're responsible for making sure those systems are available so that the doctors and the nurses are able to communicate with their patients and they're able to do their jobs. We're also responsible for actually going on to the units and helping support the COVID units directly as far as if there's equipment failures or anything like that. we actually have to go on there and provide support.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavats. Sorry, it looks like we've lost Radha Bhagavan Prabhu. My apologies about that. He's been having some technical difficulties, I think, on his Wi-Fi side. So please give me a minute. Just quickly try and see if I can ping him and get him back online again. Thank you, if you don't mind just bearing with us. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, that's great about your IT work. So, Sarah, I'm
Okay, looks like we've kind of lost him again. Just give me a second. Let's see if he's going to try and dial in again one more time. Apologies to the viewers at the moment. My apologies. We'll try and get him online as soon as possible.
I think it's back.
you can see me now.
Yes, we can see you now.
You can hear me, Chaitanya?
I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. Great. It was great to hear about the work that you are doing in healthcare IT. So, Sarah, like we were talking last year, so tell me something about a typical day that you are facing right now in terms of with the new COVID crisis coming up and different types of patients that are coming up. So, tell me about a typical day for you right now.
Okay. So originally, everything was business as usual for me. And literally, I came in, I left at 5 one day. The next day I came in and we were full on running COVID hospital. It happened overnight. The hospital developed a COVID floor. We had our own right away unit in place, patients on. It happened that fast. So that meant everyone was going to be shifting roles. I was pulled out of the emergency room for my safety because there were so many people coming in and we didn't have enough tests. And originally we only had the 48-hour test where it would take 48 hours before you find out if someone has COVID or not. Now we can get it instantly. We have the rapid test. So there was a lot of, people were nervous and we were just trying to figure out the whole situation. And hourly, CDC was sending us information. You can't do this now. You need to do this. You need to do this. So that resulted in me coming out. They took me out of the emergency room and put me on a floor, but I was still working in the emergency room. What's changed now is with discharge planning, which is what I do as a social worker in the hospital. I'm discharging people in their 40s with oxygen to go home. We're discharging the model. Everything's changed. Before it was mostly elderly people that we'd have, they've had falls and they come in and then we discharge them to a nursing home for rehab or a rehab hospital. And now it's changed to me discharging people in their 50s to a rehab hospital, or people in their 40s going home, like I said, with oxygen. This is all new. This is all a new thing. Perfectly healthy people prior to coming into the hospital. Well, prior to living their lives, working, and then they get COVID and everything's changed. That's what's so our roles have changed. Another big thing that I've never had to so much deal with before, unless the family members were international. We don't allow visitors into the hospital anymore. So that's a new thing. So people are coming into the hospital, they don't have that support or that advocate with them. So then we have to advocate even more for them. We are using technology now more that for we used to use that at like our regular technology. We're FaceTiming family members now, or we're Zooming family members to be a part of the meetings with the doctors because they can't be in the hospital with them. For end of life stuff, families have to decide, do they want to come in, because we only allow 2 people to come in if someone's leaving their body to be with the person. So family members are having to make that tough decision of, do I come in and expose myself to COVID and then expose the rest of my family to COVID so that I can be with this person to leave their body? Or do I stay home and then we have to set up a Zoom or a FaceTime for them to be with their family members as they're leaving? So that's a whole new thing. That's created a whole new experience for our nurses and for social work staff. And so that's something that's big and new that's happening in the hospital. So now families are having to make really tough decisions about end of life for their significant others or families. That's another new thing, and that's happening in the hospitals, and a new role for us as social workers to support the families, because we're advocating for the family members, and we're a direct link for the family members that can't come into the hospital. We're calling them, reassuring them, updating them, and doing a lot of planning on the phones. That's all new for us as in the hospital and as a social work department that we're having to adjust to.
We've lost Prabhu one more time. Okay, here we go. He's back. Give me a second. I'll put him online. Hi, Krishna. Apologies. Looks like he's trying one more time. I'm going to try and rope him back in again. Give me a second.
I'm sorry, having some technical issue. Cyclone in my area, so on it. So, yeah, hearing Shara, I mean, that's a for me. So, it can taking a lot of toll on your psychologically. It must be very, very blessing times.
Can't hear him.
Chaitanya Prabhu and Sarah Mataji. I think we still got a bit of technical difficulties with Radio Bhagavan Prabhu. I'm just wondering whether maybe we should just reschedule. I think it's going to continue his issues with streaming. And
Anurada's
maybe I
saying
think,
she can do it.
sorry?
Anurada's messaging us and she's saying she can do the interview.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mataji.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Hey, so good to see you guys.
Likewise.
I'm so sorry about this. It's the first time that Aranya Bhagavan is doing the interview, and he's in Kolkata, and we have no idea about the status of the internet, etc. So I apologize, and I apologize to our viewers. So, Shara, it was just so amazing to hear from you about your experiences in hospital. Like, can you just share a little bit about how that impacted your family life and kind of like what your children? I know you have a big a big tube of a family, and how that impacted them hearing from you, or exactly how much you shared, etc.
So I don't usually share too much about my job with the kids because it can be there's a lot that goes on. I mean, our kids age range 18, 15, 5, and 9 months, and they're all boys. So they'll ask me questions like, especially the 15-year-old and the 18-year-old. Do you guys, especially in the beginning, are there COVID patients there? Are you seeing people coming in? And I was honest, yes, it's happening. This is a real thing. There are people coming in. They're coming in really sick. And so we would have that conversation. Our 5-year-old is still bummed because right around now, this is when summer camp starts for him. So we just had to talk to him yesterday about camp, and we're trying to, see if it's going to be a possibility. The 9-month-old is totally clueless. He just wants, our love and attention and food, lots of food. So mostly I share with Chaitanya what's going on and just kind of the stressors and the experiences, and just more and more it's hitting closer to home for us, because before, majority of our patients in the hospital that I work in, they're in their 80s. It's mostly basic, setting up home care for them or sending them off to a nursing facility for rehab. But now it's changing where these people that are coming in are closer to our age and they are active and healthy, and then they're just hit by COVID and everything's changed.
And I think the real thing, especially with family life, is how do you manage the expectations of a toddler, of a teenager, of a high school graduate, who are used to having a certain expectations of maybe partying after graduation and getting ready for the next steps. Mm-hmm. Or like she said, our toddler who's ready for summer camp and to go swimming. And now we have to say, well, we've got to figure out something else we can do, or we're not even sure how long the situation is even going to last. So.
Yeah.
Wow. That's intense. Shara, can you speak a little bit more about the range of people that were affected because we were given the impression that, if you have a fairly good immune system, that you can kind of go through it, experience some of the symptoms and then maybe come through it. But we're hearing now that just kind of all ranges of and ages of people are being affected in really harsh ways as well.
Absolutely. Originally, we were hearing 65 and over, they're the high risk, and those are the ones that should be concerned. Young people, not so much. But now I'm seeing people from 18 and up coming in. And the new thing, not newer thing, but as it's going along, we're seeing people leaving that are you know, we're like, okay, they're healthy. Well, they've improved. They're doing better. They can be discharged from the hospital. And then they leave. And then 3 days later, they're back. They're on breathing machines. They're in the ICU. So there's no way to kind of tell how it's going to affect everyone. We've had healthy people in their 20s, healthy people in their 40s coming in, and they're leaving. They're in the ICU on breathing machines. And I know like a lot of the media focuses on people being on these breathing machines, but then there are other people that are still doing okay. And they're still in the hospital. They're leaving. Like I said, I just 2 days ago, I discharged a young man. To me, I mean, we're the same. We were actually the same age. He's 42, working, living his life, very active pre-COVID. And I'm discharging him home with oxygen, where he has to be monitored on oxygen and then followed up after, because even though he's medically stable, for him to still improve when he goes home, he has to be on this oxygen for a while until his lungs are better and he can walk distances without stopping and not without needing oxygen. And this is a person who's 41 years old. I'm 40. This is, I mean, so it's affecting every age group. There's it's just going after everyone.
That's really intense to hear. Caitanya Kishor, so whenever we hear about, an IT job, we always think like it's, you're sitting behind a really cool, a MacBook, large screen, and, so how has this affected you in the healthcare industry working in the IT department?
So for me, I mean, IT is IT. You're dealing a lot with machines and systems and computers. Also dealing a lot with people, which is not often talked about in IT, especially in my position and being in the healthcare in the hospital. I think the big difference for us, our entire department, is just like our positions have somehow taken on they become more serious, because now before we were supporting different systems, right? Helping other people to do their job. But now with the whole COVID situation, what's happened is the resources of the hospital have become concentrated on this one issue of supporting COVID, the doctors, the patients, the nurses, and everyone. And so it's given, in some ways, it's given our job more of a purpose, that we're not just dealing with computers, but we're actually helping people who are on the front line. We're directly behind the people on the front line, helping them to do their positions. And in some instances, like myself, I'm on call to go to the different COVID units. So I'm actually in a situation where I'm being exposed and could potentially be a risk for catching COVID. So it's just kind of a different ball game. I don't get to sit in my chair behind a computer screen anymore and hide, if you will.
Just one more question while we're talking about you, Caitanya Kishor. How has this entire experience, of just seeing people, die, helped your devotional life and, practices, chanting, hearing, etc.?
So there was something I was sharing with Shara. So I work for, this is a probably multi-billion-dollar research hospital, one of the biggest research hospitals on the East Coast. And prior to COVID, I would walk down the hall. There would literally be thousands of people because it's such a huge campus. So what we saw when COVID come was the hospital transform basically into a COVID hospital. So it was interesting to see this hospital with so many different resources focus all of those resources and energies on this one particular problem. So for me, in my spiritual life, that was kind of a good way to take a look at the resources we have as individuals, right? Some of us are really good at music. Some of us are really good at sports. Some of us are really good at business. Those are all resources. But now it's like, okay, how do you take those very same resources and devote those same resources to your spiritual practice, right? So making your spiritual practice more concentrated, becoming even more attentive in your meditation. The same attentiveness that you would have, just say if you were, let's say you're a musician, there's a certain amount of attentiveness, there's a certain amount of resources that go into you performing a musical piece. So how do you take that same energy and transfer it to your spiritual life? So for me, seeing that, the change and kind of the different way I look at it is just taking the resources I have and that are available to me and really putting that same energy into my meditation, putting that same energy into hearing and really digesting what it is that I'm reading. So things have just gotten, I don't know, you say life is more serious. There's this threat of the unknown with COVID. People will talk about different conspiracies going on. And yeah, they may be true, they may not. But the fact of the matter is that people are literally losing their life, and there's no rhyme or reason to this disease. So kind of dealing with this whole unknown. It's a reminder of the unknown that we constantly deal with, which is when will we leave our bodies, and how do we prepare for that?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That is, it's very, very sobering, to hear you speak like this. Shara, how do you think that this affects your spiritual life as well? And how do you maintain your family, your family duties in addition to your devotional practices and, your work life, etc.?
So I've always struggled with my devotional life and devotional practice. That's like a given. It's a constant struggle for me. Daily struggle. What I've started doing now is before I start my day, especially when I get to work, I read, even if it's just a line out of the Bhagavad Gita. I've started to incorporate that into my life. With people, I've always heard, or we've known that from the day we enter this world, we're going to die. And this is more, it's in our face now. It's definitely in my face more now. And I think about, seeing people that are leaving their body on, like you'll see it online or pictures, and there's usually people with them and someone's chanting for them or with them, and there's all this association that they're having. And we never consider or think about that there's a possibility that we would be leaving by ourselves. So that's really made me think a lot more about my practice as well, and prepare me. Caitanya always tells me, when you're leaving your body, that you're supposed to think, the ultimate goal for us is to think about Krishna when we're leaving. And I always take advantage or that someone will be there to remind me. Someone will be there to chant and remind me to call out for the Lord. With COVID, there's a possibility that no one's going to be there. If you're in a hospital, my particular hospital, you're only allowed 2 visitors. And it's only those 2 people that can be with you the whole time when you're leaving. You can't rotate through people. It has to be those 2 assigned people. So it's had us open that conversation for end of life. We talked about who's going to be that 1 or that 2, who's going to be that person to be there with you. So that's how, for me, my perspective, and just knowing that there is an absolute possibility that we will be alone or could be alone, and how am I going to prepare for that? So to prepare for that, I am starting to, like I said, read more, which is something that I always take advantage of. I mean, we literally have a wall of books here, and I completely take advantage of that. And now I'm starting to read more, and even if it's just one round, chanting one round, just doing something where I have that time with the Lord.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you. I'm always so impressed with your honesty and your intention always to do better, and we can all learn from that. So thank you, for sharing so honestly. You both have 4 children. Isn't that correct?
Yes. Yes.
4 boys, right? So can you just share a little bit about your parenting and kind of your views on parenting, especially during this pandemic, and how you approach it during this time and in general?
I think the main focus for us, I think 2 things. Try to maintain. We got 4 boys, so it's a bit of a different household than others. But the big thing is to try to maintain the structure.
Yeah.
Try to maintain the sense of I don't want to say normalcy, but continuity. That in spite of all these things, there are also stuff that must be done, that we must continue to do until there's some other option or there's some other alternative. So maintaining that structure, maintaining that normalcy, and trying to create a household that is centered around spirituality, right? That Krishna, God, is the center of our household, is the basis of our household. And on top of that, trying to create an atmosphere of openness where you can talk to someone. If you don't want to talk to dad, you can talk to mom or even some of our friends, or even some of their friends, trying to maintain a household where it's open, where people can ask questions about COVID and any subject, really.
Mm-hmm. Something that we've always maintained in the house is to have that openness and allow that. Of course, it's different now. The kids are all home. We have a graduating senior this year, so he's not going to be able to walk. That's a big deal here in the West, in the U.S. Walking across the stage. He's no prom for him. Here in Maryland, Senior Beach Week is a big deal, so no Senior Beach Week for him. So just processing that stuff with him and finding alternatives. He's helping out in the yard now. It's a new thing. It's a big thing for us. So this is our new normal, and we have to adjust to it. And we're just trying to keep everything as real and positive for the kids, and not shake them up too much. Of course, we keep our routine in the home, which helps.
I like to shake them up.
Just not too much.
You guys have a good cop, bad cop routine going.
Yes, we do.
Absolutely.
Could you just share a little bit about the ages of your children, and just to give us a perspective of the range of parenting that you do?
So we have an 18-year-old, 15-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 9-month-old.
That's so wonderful. Just going up some of these questions. So Shara, you gave such a vivid picture of the pandemic that you've been experiencing. And there's so much going around the internet, as to whether these are just, controversy. Is it a myth? It's not as bad as the flu virus. It's not as bad as some other plagues that have hit our country and our world, for that matter. But you're experiencing real-time deaths and tragedy and loss. So can you address this whole concept of these controversies are they just myths? What is your take on that?
So I see it real time. I don't know about, I try to, it's hard. Like sometimes people will send me these things and they're just like, oh, is this true? And I'm like, every day we're living it. We go in, I have to gear up. I can't go on any unit without my mask on. At the hospital, we have to have our mask on. It's real. It's a real disease. People are really dying. We've had to, like I said, small town hospital, they had to get extra freezer trailers in the back for the bodies because we were not used to having that many people dying at the same time. The backup plan was to use the local county ice rink if it got to be so much.
Which is no longer the backup plan.
Which is no longer the backup plan, thank goodness, because
well, there is the plan now because they're using the ice rinks for the bodies.
Yeah.
And I think whatever you think about the different controversies and conspiracies, the insight I think from both of us is the closer you are, like there's a real effect.
Mm-hmm.
There's a very real effect. There's a very real effect, and there are so many different unknowns. But what we do know is that people are passing from COVID. It's happening. So whatever leads up to that, I don't know. When you're kind of closer to the front line, what leads up to that becomes inconsequential, if you will. As Shara said, now you're dealing with end of life care, or you're dealing with being perfectly healthy one day and being on oxygen another day.
Okay.
So maybe the conspiracies, maybe they're real, maybe they aren't. But I think sometimes until it hits closer to home, whether it's you, a family member, it's very difficult to get a grasp on. But for us being in the healthcare industry, it's something you can't minimize it. It's something that you have to take seriously. And in all fairness, the risk is just it's not worth taking. It's not worth taking. Yeah.
Yeah, we in our temple here, we reopened last week, and we're trying to have all these different measures. Asking people to wear masks when they are in an enclosed area, specifically the temple room. We have squares marked off everywhere. And of course, there's a lot of throwback about that there's all these different scientific studies that masks are not good, or if you can maintain social distance, you don't have to wear a mask. But there's all these different little finicky details, So what would your advice be to people just about embracing some of these things, even if it's just for a short time, or the different cautionary things that you can take on to actually prevent yourself or others around you or your loved ones from getting this? Can you speak a little bit about that?
So for me, take away the self part and just start thinking about others. There are other people, we don't know what their health conditions are, what they have, or there are people that I've encountered and I've worked with that were asymptomatic, and then they're having just a little chest pain. Chest pain turns into lungs are completely, pneumonia-like COVID lungs. So we just can't take that chance. And it's just not, for me, you're not only protecting yourself, you're helping others. It's not only for you, it's for others. Social distancing, of course, maintain that. I mean, we haven't seen our family members and because we're healthcare workers. So we have to, even though Caitanya is doing IT and I'm a social worker, I'm not doing direct patient care where I'm a nurse and in the rooms, but we're still exposed. So we gotta consider, we're considered others. So we haven't seen, my brother is moving. He's going to Connecticut on June 3rd, and I haven't seen him. And I probably won't see him when he leaves. But we're going to hold off until this clears up and we can start doing things like that again.
For me, I think I don't like to be told what to do. So I understand. I don't want to wear a mask. Why should I wear a mask? Why should I do this? Why should I practice social distance? I get it. However, with this COVID, there's so much unknown. I think that's the big thing. You can have somebody like, how do I know that I have it or don't have it? You know, I have no idea. I'm perfectly healthy. But there are plenty of perfectly healthy people who are carriers of the disease. It may not affect them, it may not affect their immediate family, but if they go out and don't wear a mask and maybe cough and someone walks past, there's a potential for it to affect someone else. So I really feel like just to put on a mask, they're a little irritating. They get hot after a while. It's hard to breathe. But if that's the most that's being requested of us, it just seems like that's acceptable. You know, the social distance, if this is all they're asking to kind of prevent this kind of people just passing, I don't think it's such a big deal. I don't believe that they're asking a lot of us, and it's a reasonable precaution that we can take to at least try to help it from spreading. I'm like everyone else. I would love it when this is over and we can go back to normal, if you will. But you know what they're asking us to do, it's reasonable. I think it's very reasonable, given under the circumstances.
Yeah, I think I appreciate that. That it's just kind of a reasonable thing, and I appreciate that you said that they're not asking too much. You know, when you think about it, we're just so used to this kind of unlimited amount of freedom. You know, so when you think about social distancing, wear a mask in enclosed spaces, it's really not too much to ask. So I appreciate that. Do you see that this whole pandemic is driving people to be more appreciative of, you know, yoga and mantra and meditation, more introspection, etc.?
I'll let you go ahead. I'll let you go.
I think so. I'm on Facebook and I've seen so many different programs, so many. I mean, there was the big chanting groups that were like all over the world, that international chanting thing that was going on, and I think people are searching for something. They're searching for answers. They're searching for a peace of mind. There's a lot of anxiety that this has brought on for many people. Heightened levels of anxiety and stress, and people aren't working. People are out of jobs. They're not able to live like they used to before. So I think people are seeking for answers and kind of searching for having questions and searching for answers to what's going on. Why me? Why us? Why our family? Why? There's a lot of whys. So I think people are searching and looking and seeking for answers on a spiritual side. That's my take on things.
I don't know. I got a different take. I think people, from what I'm seeing, is people are looking at how can we enjoy life more, harder, and faster under the circumstances. But at the same time, there does seem to be an uptick in participation in many of these online spiritual talks and chats and song and everything. So I think it's good that it's becoming, not that it's becoming more available, but it is making people more aware of, you know, that there's something more.
Yeah. Do you have any just realizations or kind of last thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience? Remember, this is going to be uploaded. It's actually streaming live on YouTube. It'll be on the website. It's going to be kind of, you know, there for people to come back and listen and hear from you guys. So is there anything, kind of some last words you'd like to share, some realizations, etc.?
You want to share? I'll start. So it's been interesting to see the different reactions. COVID in some ways has kind of revealed where we are in our lives, economically, you know, financially, socially. It's revealed, you know, how we really feel about our family members. You know, at least in the U.S., there's a huge uptick in domestic violence. It's revealing where we are spiritually. It's revealing our fears of death, our fears about not even being able to enjoy life. So I think we've been having this conversation in our household. The biggest thing I believe it's brought up an opportunity to kind of take these questions, these bigger questions, and take them more seriously, but not just take them more seriously, to actually act on these bigger questions of, hey, the day might come, the day is going to come where I leave this body. Like, what am I doing now to prepare for it? What have I learned up to this point to prepare for leaving this body? And the things I've learned, am I taking them seriously? Can I take them more seriously? Can I take them with more gravity? So for us to our conversation has been, we have the good fortune to gain so much spiritual knowledge and spiritual company and companionship and friendship. But now taking those things and even taking a deeper dive with what we already have, with what's already in place. Because again, COVID is revealing to all of us, where are you? What do you have? What's in place? What processes do you have in place financially, spiritually, economically, on every front? So just kind of taking what you have, those resources you have, and concentrating them, and especially for our meditation, if you're meditating or if you're chanting, focusing on the quality of the chanting, the quality of the meditation, and trying to increase the quality. That's something that we do have some control over. We have some control over whether the quality of our lives, the quality of our existence.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I love spending time with you guys, and I'm always intrigued about your stories of how you came to Krishna consciousness. And I know I said that I wanted you to share some realizations, but we have still a few minutes left. And so maybe Caitanya and then Shara, you could just share a little bit of how you came to Krishna consciousness, and what's your journey been in Krishna consciousness thus far.
I'll keep it brief. But I came to Krishna consciousness because I was looking for the truth. Growing up as an American teenager, exposed to a lot of things. The truth is not necessarily one of those things. There's a real emphasis on the culture of enjoyment, especially as a young American teenager. You have so much access, you have so much freedom. So at a certain point, I had friends who were into alternative things, and I got in contact with them, and I was like, hey, you guys, I want to know what all this is about. My journey for me started with wanting to know the truth. So one day, I like to say that I found a book in a used bookstore, and my journey began from there. But reflecting back, I really feel like the book was waiting on me, and it was just waiting on me to pick it up. And whoever distributed that book, they left it right there in that used bookstore just for me to pick up and start my spiritual journey. So my first journey, my first step into Krishna consciousness was wanting to find out what the truth is. The next step was finding a Srimad Bhagavatam in a used bookstore, and I've been riding that wave ever since. And the journey overall, and I think it's kind of the same in many different spiritual communities, of how do you maintain the zeal, how do you maintain the zeal of that you originally had when you were first exposed to something incredible, and how do you continue to kind of keep that ball rolling? How do you go deeper, but as well, how do you go deeper spiritually and also maintain? You have an external life that also requires maintaining. You have family, you have children. How do you forge a deeper connection spiritually, but also maintain all of those things externally? So for me, the biggest part of the ride is balance. It's really about balance.
So I met devotees when I was 15 in high school. I had the honor, or don't call it luck. It's definitely not luck. The blessing of meeting Vrindarani, who is the wife of Gauravani. And we immediately became very, very close friends, best friends. And then I met her parents, Ramatulsi and Anuttama, who's a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and they took me in. I had a great family, but then now I have an amazing spiritual family. And we went on family trips, and being around them at Krishna, it was just their life. There wasn't anything weird or different about them. Krishna consciousness was their life. They lived it. It was normal for me to we'll go on road trips together out to West Virginia or somewhere, and Prabhupada tapes were playing. That was the norm for us. And then from there, I continued to meet more devotees, and was always exposed to Krishna consciousness through that way, and it was a normal thing. Of course, like I said, I've always struggled with Krishna consciousness and becoming an active practicer, but I've always stayed close. I would always find a temple whenever I traveled. When I went to college, I always maintain relationships with devotees throughout my life, and I had the blessing to be introduced to Caitanya by Rukmini Devi, who is a Prabhupada disciple, and she later on married us. So I've always been around. I've always stayed close to devotees, and they've always taken very good care of me and blessed me. So how could I ever want to leave? Devotees have, I guess, in different ways, we can both easily say that devotees have saved our lives. So we owe devotees so much, and by the Lord's mercy, they've always been close to us. So that's how I met. That's how I came into Krishna consciousness and meeting devotees, and here we are.
I never tire of hearing that story, Shara. And I just wanted to say that, just for our viewers, that Rukmini is the mother of Gauravani, who is the mother-in-law of Vrindarani, your best friend from high school, correct? Caitanya, I have to just share this part. Did you say that you, before you met Shara, that you really just wanted to meet an angel? Is that correct? Or am I getting that story completely wrong?
So that's kind of like, when you hear a story and you hear the main parts of the story, and then somebody comes out and makes a movie about the story you haven't heard before. So that's more like the story you haven't heard. Prior to meeting Shara, life was great. I say that because, I had met devotees, I was going among the arati, and I was really getting settled. I was almost like I was getting settled in the brahmachari life without even knowing it. So, I had a very rigid schedule, and it was wonderful. But I remember we kind of had a conversation with my brother downtown. He's the witness that this happened. And I say, there's no way I get married. There's no way I deal with females again, unless Krishna would have to drop an angel right into my lap. And there's no possibility that that's how. I was kind of trying to talk it out of it, that Krishna, don't do this. Don't mess things up for me. The only way this would happen is if you drop the angel in my lap, and it's the only possible way. So, in my mind, I set it up that I would never have to deal with this again, and I can go on chanting and being in this rigid lifestyle forever. And I want to say the very next night, or the very next morning or two, I spoke with Rukmini Mataji, and I received an email, and it began from there, and now we're here.
Thank you for sharing that story. That's like a very typical for, an American couple. That's such an Indian Vedic way of like an arranged marriage. So yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing those beautiful stories. And thank you for coming on. I know you guys have insanely busy lives. 4 children, 2 full-time jobs, very demanding jobs, especially during the pandemic. You are definitely both angels and heroes, right now in our society. So thank you so much. I'm sure that we're going to want to have you back on in some time after things kind of settle down, or who knows. I'm just looking at a comment here about this kind of new normal. So maybe we should just take this because we have just a few minutes left. It has become difficult to believe suggestions for going back to normal. It often looks like the push to go back to normal is more about economics and less about what's actually safe for citizens. What variables will the two of you use for your believing that it is actually safe for you and your kids to be in groups without masks and without social distancing? Okay. Any thoughts about that? And then we can close that.
Yeah, sure. It's definitely something we've been talking about. So I see the economics of it. That makes me a bit uncomfortable because right now you gotta think pretty much the entire economy just crashed or just paused. So for an entire economy to get back to normal, that won't happen in a month. That won't happen in 2 months. That won't happen in 3 months. That may not even happen in a year. So the effect has already been tremendous. So for us, we're still not very comfortable with not maintaining social distances. We're still having a conversation. Our 5-year-old starting school for the first time in the fall. We're still having a conversation about, are we going to be comfortable sending him to school? So we're really I think we're really watching the status of how COVID is trending. How the outbreak is trending. Are there certain areas where it's increasing? Is it increasing where people are being overpopulated? Is it decreasing where people are actually following the measures of social distancing and wearing masks? How seriously are different organizations taking it? If we send them to school, that's great, but what's their perspective on making sure kids and parents don't catch COVID? How seriously are they taking it? Does their seriousness meet our seriousness? So those are some of the things that we're looking at. How are different organizations handling it? How's the actual disease trending? And we're kind of in the same state as everybody else. We're just not sure yet. And we just don't know. And we both feel like we just don't have enough information. We're just kind of winging it right now, just like everyone.
Yep. I think that's kind of the MO for most of us right now. It's just like we just don't know, So on that, I just don't know. No. I thank you so much for joining us on this BBC SBT channel for this interview about healthcare workers on the front lines, for sharing your time with us and your wonderful knowledge and experiences, etc. And be sure, viewers, that you share this video so that you can educate your friends and family about the pandemic and kind of healthcare workers on the front lines. And go ahead and press that, like and follow button. We have tomorrow 2 wonderful events, so press your notifications on. Check out our YouTube channel, our webpage. It's also gbcsbt.com. Sorry, gbcsbt.com, and keep following us. We have wonderful events every single day of the week. So with that, thank you so much. Be safe, be healthy, continue being the wonderful people that you are. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.